Okay, yeah, so top line update. We finalised the title.
It's just a piece of cake. Kate. Damn it. A piece of Kate.
It
It gets me every time.
It's 5 o'clock on Monday. Kind of day one of campaign and pod, because that was the pilot that we did yesterday. And today is like the first Monday since the election's been called. So it feels like day one of...
And it was a classic Monday where you get out of bed and then it's 4:30 and you're in a massive panic because you're like, what the
Mondays
hell?
are such a nightmare.
Every meeting overran and went into each other. And there's kind of fundamental things that I feel like oh my God, we haven't done that on the website, whatever.
Totally. We'll do that at midnight tonight. We switched off the mics yesterday and we realised that we didn't really hone in yesterday's episode on like the kind of number one motivation for our campaign, which is like
money. Oh, sorry.
To get rich. No. Which is that people are like really tired of the way politics is being done and they're really sick of the major parties.
Yeah.
That just like came through at the state campaign, you know, and I think has been like the sentiment around that, it feels even stronger in the federal context.
Totally.
And so we sort of decided that today's episode was going to be a bit of a chat about the reasons for that and, you know, how, or the different ways in which the major parties are kind of excluding us or disengaging us from our own democracy and from participating in politics.
How disappointing they are.
Totally.
How underwhelming they are.
Totally.
How low expectations we have of, you know, the tiniest thing that they announce, we're like, oh, thank you for the crumbs that you've given us. So grateful. And it's like, where are the big ideas and where are the brave, courageous moves for our country?
Yeah.
None of that. And I guess it's worth noting that in 2024, when the Voices for Fremantle crew were doing all their work, one of the questions was, would you vote for an independent candidate? And I think 7 out of 10 people said yes. And, you know, that real disillusionment with the two major parties was like the major kind of feedback. So we didn't just like wake up one morning and go, I sense this in the zeitgeist. It's like, no, it's actually palpable and measurable and documentable. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
I got you.
You get the gist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, you were talking today about the 1 in 3 Australians.
So every, I think it's like in the 60s or something like 90% of people voted for the two main parties. I mean, these are not real facts, but you know what I'm saying. A lot of people voted for the two main parties, and now it's like a third vote for Liberal, a third vote for Labor, a third vote for anyone else, the minor parties and the independents. And I bet at this election it will be even more. I don't know whether 10%, maybe they're all dummy votes, but I know that doesn't add up to 100%. Just write in and let me know about my maths. But yes, so it's becoming far more normal and accepted, and people are moving away from the major parties. And because elections are so far apart, it doesn't feel, it's like glacial, but it's happening. And the major parties are obviously terrified. They don't want that to happen. They want to retain and maintain power. So that's why they do deals with each other. And that's why they try and, you know, badmouth everyone else that gives it a go.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting that, I mean, we kind of joke about this, but I think it's true. Like when you see the two major parties joining forces in Parliament and voting together on things, that's like kind of when you should start asking questions about what the legislation was that they were passing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like the two major parties, there's the Liberal Party and the Labor Party. We could probably talk about them a bit more in another episode, but like traditionally when I was little, it would be Liberal is good for small businesses and for people that like are the economy, I guess, of the nation. And Labor was like rights for workers and a fair go. And, you know, they were behind Medicare and free education and those sorts of things, more people-based stuff. But everyone's gone so far away from their original premise. It's insane. And you know, as we go forward, both parties are becoming more and more similar and going more and more centre-right to right-wing. So they're far less progressive, far less about people, individuals and care and ambition, and more about like corporate money, I don't know, protection, police, all that sort of stuff. Power, yeah. It's all about power and maintaining and retaining and growing power.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does come back to that. And it's like, it's not necessarily like when we say, and when people talk about, you know, if we're like out in the community talking about this issue, people aren't necessarily saying, you know, I've read every policy and I can't see a single difference between Liberal and Labor. Like, that's not really the sentiment. It's more I can't identify how either of these parties is acting in my interest. I can't see them being leaders on my behalf. Like, it's more of a kind of vibe check, you know, like people just don't see it, don't like how they see them doing politics. And it's like, it's the mudslinging, it's the like constant attacks, it's the scare campaigning. Like, that's what people are tired of.
And it's, you know, I mean, when you see in Parliament, government, Parliament House, whatever it's called, the White House in Australia, that they're just like standing up, screaming at each other and belittling each other and being, you know, misogynistic or whatever. And you think, if that happened in your work, you would be fired, or, I mean, you wouldn't, because it's wacko to do that. It's weird to stand up and shout at people. All we want our politicians to do is make the laws and legislation and policies to make our country thrive and flourish and people to be able to pay their bills. And, you know, we were saying this the other day about how crazy, if you think about the words, the cost of living, like the cost of being alive is too much. Like, it's too expensive to be alive. It's too expensive to pay your rent. It's too expensive to buy groceries. How did that happen? How did we let that happen? Why weren't the levers and the, you know, parameters not kind of put in place? How are we here, I guess? And it seems quite unbelievable as, you know, you go through life and you have normal jobs and you see how businesses work, and it's like, this business needs to be better, and so we'll do these things to make it better, and we'll put this stuff in place to make it better. But then when it comes to a whole country, it's basically just men in suits fighting with each other about how we can let the friggin' salmon farming corporation keep annihilating
and it feels like
harbour.
A lot of that is because, I mean, just the more they act like each other and the more they're concerned about how they're perceived and how they're, say, portrayed in the mainstream media or whatever, that's what's kind of dictating the behaviour rather than what's actually best for Australians. I
guess that's the other thing to say, is our media ownership is some of the most concentrated in the world. So our newspapers are owned by so few people, and there are so few of them, that they can really dictate policies and government effectively. And governments are so scared of losing power that they will comply with what the newspapers want in order to retain their positions.
And / or like having a massive gas company run scare campaign ads in said newspapers. You know.
So something I found out, was that the West Australian Kerry Stokes owns $100 million of Woodside shares. So, of course, they're always writing really great stuff about how cool gas is and how fundamental and important it is. But it's an enormous conflict of interest. It's basically, then it just becomes a brochure for, you know, fossil fuels.
Yeah, which sometimes it quite literally is when you look at it.
It is, yeah. Honestly, you flick through and you're like, oh, wow, this is great. But it's not journalism. It's propaganda. Anyhow.
So something happened this morning. We woke up this morning and there was kind of a really great example in the news of, you know, how the, I guess, MPs that are sitting in the major parties act in Parliament, and it's just kind of an illustration of the lack of real representation that is coming through. And that event was Josh Wilson having expressed a personal view that he's not such a big fan of the nuclear subs plan on a podcast last December Do you want to tell me more about that?
Yeah,
You've been reading about it today.
There's a podcast called The Shipping News with a host called Michael Barker, and he interviews people all the time, every week, and he had a nice chat with Josh.
My view is that that's not the best platform. Nuclear propelled submarines, for what they deliver, is not. I'm not convinced that that's actually the kind of boat that we need, as is the case in every area of life and certainly in politics. One's view doesn't always prevail, and I think it's a healthy thing. It's funny, I say, as a person who's in the Labor Party and therefore one of the the so-called big parties, people express concern if those parties are made up of a group of people who all think exactly the same. And the truth is, we don't.
What we know, if you look on their website called They Work For You, They Vote For You, How They Vote, something like that. We'll pop that in the notes or whatever.
Is that a thing? Do we have notes?
We do now. Write that down. So you can see how each MP votes, and you'll always see that, particularly in the Labor Party, they all have to vote as a block. So they all have to, they'll have 100% agreement on stuff.
So basically, he's going on a podcast saying that he has a personal view that conflicts with the party's view. And this is only coming up in the press because someone from the Liberal Party...
The Liberals, yeah.
Pulled it out to try to make a spectacle about division in the ranks in Labor or whatever.
The Liberals are just digging around for anything, but it illustrates that you, as a MP of the major parties, you can't really speak on behalf. Josh is referring to the fact that Fremantle's been anti-nuclear for many years, and yes, his upbringing, like many of us here, is anti-nuclear, and that doesn't just mean the generation of power, but also nuclear waste, nuclear subs, and everything that entails. So he's unable to speak on behalf of his community. He might be able to speak on behalf of his community in the back rooms, but when it comes to voting, he can't vote with his conscience or his conscience or his community.
We don't actually know whether he is speaking on behalf of his community in the back rooms. We don't know what is happening in those conversations. What we have to go off is the voting record.
I also saw something else. I was Googling about. All right, Boomer. Hang on a second.
What was it?
It was like a little. Hang on, I'm going to find it. It was about.
Oh God, she's going into the chats just for for people who can't see this. She's going into a very.
This is my storage
vibrant
system.
Group chat that's almost impossible to find things in.
Oh yeah, here we are. Cabinet's rules say, and this is in quotation marks, ministers must not only refrain from publicly criticising cabinet decisions, but also defend them publicly, or else resign. And then that's the end of the quote. And it says they shouldn't offer their personal views on government policies or other portfolios without speaking to the relevant minister first. It just feels lame.
And what's also kind of problematic in that is, it says personal views, but what about constituent views?
100%.
And are we differentiating, I'm not going to blanket disagree that personal views shouldn't dictate the way that MPs act. I think that their constituents' views should dictate that.
100%.
But they can't. And he
they
can't.
simply can't.
And so he was also on the radio recently responding to some criticisms that you made about the voting record stuff.
Just let me put that one to you then. So Kate says that, you can't vote the way you want to vote, that you've got to vote as part of a bloc within the Labor government. True?
No, I don't know where that idea comes from. I participate in the Labor Party decision-making processes. I'm part of the national conference process. I'm part of caucus and caucus committees and all of those things. And that's how government works. At the end of the day, I'm not sure if Kate or anyone could contemplate an entire parliament of independence. Who would the government be? Who would the Prime Minister be? How would you have an agenda that the Australian people can consider?
He just kind of scoffed at it, as if, of course, we talk about it and I contribute, but then ultimately that has just proven that you cannot, vote the way you want. Because it's, and we've seen an example where someone has voted the way they want.
You're talking about
Fatima Payman, yeah, who bravely spoke out, against the genocide in Gaza, and she said things that the Labor Party didn't want her to say, so therefore she had to leave. And I, she's had a huge groundswell of support because, yes, the community want representation on this stuff, and they want people to speak out, and they don't want, shrouded kind of language and middling behaviour. So, yeah, I mean, if you want a representative who represents you, then you're not going to get that from a major party.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the larger effect is that it shuts down debate and it shuts down participation, which is how we find ourselves in a position where people are increasingly turning away from the major parties because they just feel so disengaged and disempowered. And that's like, if you can't have debate and you can't have people speaking honestly about their views or their constituents' views, or what's happening in their party, then in your view, like, what's the end game there? Like, what is the path we're on? Where does it lead us?
I kind of wasn't listening to your question, but I was thinking as you were talking about something I read about the New Zealand Parliament where it was like they had to, come up with legislation about the environment, something like that. And it was like, so the leaders of both parties got together and figured it out and came up with this legislation. And I was like, what? They negotiated on something for the country that would be good and doable and agreeable. And I mean, aside from shit we don't want, the major parties just fight and just say like, it's black, no, it's white, it's up, no, it's down. And it's just like, the friggin' planet is on fire. And just sit in a room and don't try and annihilate each other like little schoolboys. It's so embarrassing. And it's so shameful that that's what we've got as our leaders. I think that's where I can see it going. Like now it's just like fighting. 3 years. Now you have it. Now 3 years. Now you have it. Now you repeal everything that's just happened. Now you turn over everything that we've just got done. And it's just so reductive and lame, and no wonder people go, what's the friggin' point? Nothing is moving anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're not getting anything done. And I really recognise that, there's millions of people across the country and people have got really specific issues that are they know really detailed information about these specific issues. And not everyone is going to be able to answer everything all the time that suits everyone in every circumstance. Totally get it, of course. But it would be nice if we could kind of have this, like, captain of the ship steering the ship and everyone going, all right, I see where we're going, I mean, that's kind of what we want.
Yeah.
And then, I guess when we then talk about a crossbench and a, minority government, all those sorts of things, you'll note that not everyone, most of the community or all of the community independents, not necessarily all the independents who sometimes have single issues, but community independents who are representing their communities, they really want a stable government and a sensible government that is giving actual human beings good outcomes. They're not being paid for by the gambling lobby or the oil and gas or minerals or, all this influence, media, plastic bags, whatever. They are thinking, what do my people need? Yeah. Let's make that law or policy or legislation better for them.
Yeah. We've been talking about this a bit today because we were writing some lines for ads and other things. And yeah, we were stuck on this thing of like, the major parties are trying to tell everyone and trying to scare everyone into thinking that like a hung parliament situation, a minority government situation, which is what it looks like we're headed toward, is something to be afraid of. Like it's going to be bad.
Scary.
It's going to be
Terrible
unstable.
for the
Nothing's
country.
going to get done. It's, not good for us. But the community independents and the people who are holding a position on the crossbench are saying the situation we've got now isn't stable, where we just jump back and forth and they just fight and and what they are actually trying to do is to establish a different tone in Parliament that's more constructive.
And they have to negotiate.
Yeah.
There has to be negotiation. And that's what we found in the West Australian Parliament. That's what we do find, is that in the lower house, well, in the last term, because it was such a Labor majority, there was no debate. It was just something was put up, went to the lower house, went to the upper house, went through. So there was no scrutiny, no evaluation of anything. So the benefits of a minority parliament is that the legislation that's written, the drafts have to go around and people read it and go, that's a bit loony, or that needs strengthening here. It becomes better because then the government has to negotiate in order to progress it. And that is better for all of us. Much better.
Totally. Not to mention just more voices articulating different viewpoints that exist within the community.
Rural,
you know?
from coastal, from rich to poor to whatever, everywhere. Every voice then can be represented. And the great thing is this year, 1 in 4 people will be able to vote for a community independent, which is what an amazing turnaround. The first community independent was 2013, I think. I wrote it down.
We can check that later. But
fact check. I wrote it. Yeah,
who's
2013.
doing our fact checking?
It's happening live. First community independent was 2013. That model of a group of residents going, we're losing our mind at how terrible our representative is. Let's go and find someone else, and doing it themselves, like taking it in their own hands. And it like really worked. They were really thrilled with what happened. And then that was replicated around the country. And now we've got like 38 or 36, something like that, running in this federal election. So it's tried and tested. It's working. The people that are running are normal people who are not there because they want to be a politician, which is a surefire problem. If you want to be a politician, you shouldn't be in. And I reckon it's going to be really, we'll look back on 10, 20 years and go, wow, that really changed things for the better, and we started forging a better route for the country.
And that something's wrong when the major parties are teaming up to pass laws
100%.
that lock independence out and
like
running scare campaigns about, people being radical extremists or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's
kind of
because
obvious.
their position is threatened.
They're terrified.
Yeah.
And it's also a shame they're not going, this is going to strengthen things actually. This is good for our democracy. This is great. Bring it, We would love to work with some new voices that are outside the political and the party system. These are, enthusiastic people in their own lives that don't need this. They're not here for ego or money or career progression. They're here because they feel desperate. And, we for months have had dinners that we're like, what do we do? How do we help? What can we do to shape things in a way that's meaningful? And I know hundreds of my friends, I don't have that many friends. That was a joke. Tens of my friends.
I mean, you've got
ones of my
friends
friends. They have dinners or coffees or beers, and they're like, what the hell is happening in this place? And then it actually was like, that's why this is so momentous for everyone that's involved, because they're like, I feel like I am actually got my hands on this, something that we can change, and that feels cool.
Participating. And how close you are. It's like, I feel like we spend a lot of our lives thinking Canberra's far away, especially in WA, federal parliament, it's ephemeral. It's like this beast that kind of...
Parliament in bloody West Perth is the same, I've never been in there. I was like, I don't know if I've driven past. I'm sure I have. But
it feels
it's just like different.
Way,
it's just different from it. Yeah, it's
what I mean. Even for people, not a lot of people are regularly contacting their local member. They think about government as something that's happening far away from them, and there's a sense of disconnection. But when you start getting stuck into it, you realize actually how accessible it all is to you. If
totally.
But there's so many barriers to break down.
Oh,
but that's
so
been
much.
Such a strong sentiment in people getting involved in Kate for Fremantle in our campaign.
Yeah, and it's something that's really nice with that being involved, even just watching it unfold. People are writing to us saying, I've felt so inspired by seeing this that I've joined this club, or I've went to this protest, or I wrote a letter to my, you know, like their behavior has changed by seeing this and seeing people they know do this thing. And that's like wildly exciting.
Totally.
That would be another good idea for the podcast title.
Wildly exciting. Another thing that happened in the news today was Peter Dutton spruiking his new gas policy and talking about gas projects in Western Australia in the press this morning.
Yeah.
Discuss.
I guess gas is something that is quite a lot to talk about. And I have, because of the position I'm in now as a candidate, I've had the privilege to talk to many people, you know, Australia's world-leading gas expert, ex-premiers from both sides, Liberal and Labor, and I've got a, you know, pretty good grip on what's happening. But basically what's happened in WA, there was a reservation policy, which meant that a percentage of the gas that comes out of the ground, the land extracted gas, gets retained for West Australians to use. And that's managed to keep our prices down. On the East Coast, they don't have that. So what happens when you start exporting gas is the price of it is pegged on the international market. So the price goes right up, right? So East Coast prices are through the roof. West Coast prices are down. However, during COVID, Mark McGowan said, we could allow a little bit of it to go. And so he's nudged that door open, and now we've started exporting some of our gas that we own, that because it's an asset of our country, so all of us own that gas. We've allowed some of it to be exported, so our prices are starting to go up as well, right? So this week Peter Dutton announced a reservation policy for the right-hand side, the East Coast.
Yeah, for the right-hand side of the country.
And so that will hopefully bring the prices down, because if you export it, all prices go up. It's a good policy. But
if it's enforced.
Sinister, because what it is doing is, I'll get to the point, is locking gas in, so locking that fossil fuel in. Gas is what we would call a transition fuel. So we're using it now to shore up the solar panels, wind turbines, water, what's that called? Hydro. And then once we've got that all humming, batteries and the grids working, once you've done that, then you can cut the gas off. Don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Catch you later. So what he's doing is like, let's keep it running.
Let's get them addicted.
Let's keep them addicted. Lovely gas. So
why? Like, what's his motivation for that?
Well, because he doesn't want bloody electric, mate. He's going to like repeal all the green energy subsidies and the batteries and the, you know, the rewiring, electrify everything, you know, all of that. He's like, forget it, because we want to lock in fossil fuels, because Gina Rinehart's my sugar mummy. Is that a phrase we're allowed to use? Anyway, whatever, I said it.
I'm sure we'll be told if it's not.
So he said that gas reservation, East Coast, fantastic. We've already got it. So what did he say? This is the headline. Peter Dutton says export-focused Northwest gas is key to lowering WA power prices.
Loved your news presenter voice there.
Which is the opposite.
Very media watch of you.
I'm going to do the next bit, which says, opposition leader Peter Dutton has vowed to bring down power prices in Western Australia by fast-tracking the approval of an exporting gas project.
So basically he's on one side of the country saying, we need to keep gas here to keep prices down. And then he comes over to the other side of the country and says, you need to export way more to get your prices. Like, sorry?
Ding dong. What? That's what's happening. He's lost it. As have I. I mean, it's just dumb. It's dumb. I mean, it's not even what, that's all. There's nothing else to say about it.
Okay, cool.
He's a fool. He's a fool.
Next agenda item. Yeah.
So that's the news for the day. What a roundup. Anything else?
I suppose to wrap that up and to bring it back
to ding dong was enough. That was
to bring it back to the major party bit, though. I think what people find exhausting is that I mean, where do you look for some actual information? Like, neither of the major parties are giving you an actual, like a nuanced, narrative about any of this. So everyone's confused. No one knows what's right or wrong. No one knows where the country's headed in relation to, like, how they're going to get their power, which is pretty basic stuff, to know. And that's exhausting. Like, people are just sick of it.
And then you're like, I can't even be bothered. I'm not even going to, because there's so much mis and disinformation out there, and there's like
so much propaganda.
The
from
weird,
gas companies as well.
those like advance who are like paid for my Minerals Council and the Liberal Party, and then they put all this weird stuff out, both extreme ends of opinion, and then of course people are like losing it, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to seed it in people's minds, and sometimes you just have one line and you're like, didn't I read that whatever? And then it's just there. It just exists in your thoughts. And it's incredibly detrimental and degrading and belittling and all of that stuff for us.
And undermines.
Totally.
democracy.
It's really shit.
Yeah.
It's so, as I said before, it's just embarrassing and shameful and not how we wish to be as Australians. We want to be proud to be here. But at the moment, it's like, I'm just cringing all the time. The shit ads.
Switching off and disengaging.
Yeah. And just raging with my friends.
Yeah. I think as well, and like, I think we'll do future episodes on this, but, a lot of this mimics what we see happening in America, and we're lucky that we have a different voting system and we have a different parliamentary makeup. And
stay tuned for more about that.
Yeah. And, that's why it's exciting that we might have a minority government, parliament, where we have a crossbench of like sensible humans.
And
who are in
now's the
touch with their
time.
communities.
Now's the time. We're on this like precipice of heaven or hell. Not that dramatic, but it's a really important time. And then this is a really important election. And
when all people really want is for like some sensible leadership of, and a parliament made of people who are like actually focusing on real issues that impact their lives, and they want that translated to them in a way that they can understand and that makes sense and that gives them confidence and energy.
the gotchas in Parliament.
We could go on and on.
I know, but it's just so like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be dead in 40 years. Can we like hurry along with some freaking stuff? Do your friggin' jobs. You get paid a heck of a lot of money. Do your job. Anyway, what else? I feel like we should wrap up because otherwise we'll keep going forever.
Well, I mean, do we want to talk about what else happened today?
Okay,
these are the
like, bullets.
What happened to you? You woke up. You had 100 WhatsApp notifications.
As usual. Had to add someone to our federal bank account. And when I went in, the bank lady goes, the account with $0 in it? I was like, yes, that one.
Don't worry, though. We have another one that's full of gold.
Oh, so much money. If you'd like to volunteer, sign up on the website. Getting the podcast sorted, kind of. We spent a lot of time faffing about with that.
Big morning on that. Getting the pilot episode up.
Analysis of East. Oh, yeah. So we talked about. That's boring.
We looked at a map for an extended period of time and
just standing around it.
We talked about strategy. Lot on strategy today.
Lot on design and
lot on design. We're trying to do so much work at this end of the camp because I think a big learning out of state was like, it took time to get everything together, obviously. But now we're like a little bit more practice. This is our second rodeo, and so we're trying to get all those key things like donezo. True.
This is actually my second rodeo. A lot of one line, like trying to like tailor the message,
written, getting all the ads written.
But by doing that, which we have to do now, we haven't got stuff on our website. We had to take all the state policy stuff down because it's not relevant for federal. So anyone that's losing their mind about that, we are too. We're getting to that.
Just to say, it's not relevant. It's just that we're
we're
recontextualizing it.
It's as in the state laws and the federal, responsibilities.
But coming soon.
That's really annoying, I know, but it is coming soon.
I mean, there's only so fast you can write policy.
Something else that's kicking around is that you need to nominate as a candidate, and you need 100 names, addresses and signatures of people who live in the electorate.
Physically signed
with ink So there's papers everywhere and we're trying to get that done because you've got to double check everyone's on the electoral roll and their name has to be spelled exactly the same. It's a real faff about. We're talking about maybe doing another TV ad. So we did
we did chat about that.
We did the Hungry Jack's one, the cleanup last time. That was something else I did today when I watered the plants. They're all good except one looks very... In fact, I've got a bag of rubbish in my car I picked up a Jack Daniels box, half a kebab, some yochi and a cup. That was on the list today, and I think that's
it.
Mondays we've got our big team meeting.
Mondays are big, yeah.
So we're off to do that next.
Yeah,
with the whole
I've scribbled
group.
an agenda on a piece of paper, but yeah, that's in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So
and we've got to talk about fundraising. Donate if you've got any money.
Yes, please.
We'll talk about money on another episode. I reckon
think it would be interesting.
I'd love to be radically honest about how horrifyingly expensive these things are.
Yeah.
And
definitely another episode. Let's not
I
ramble.
think people are ready to
Okay, well,
get out of their cars, hop off the train.
Yeah, have a lovely day at work or wherever you're going.
We appreciate you listening. I mean, I reckon there might be 3 people listening currently, and I do appreciate each one of you. And tell your friends, spread it around.
Authorised by Kate Hulett, 106 High Street Mall, Fremantle.